Well, hello there and welcome to the Good Old Days of Radio Show. This is John Tefteller, your official host, and we have an official guest today. Before I get to that, let me just say that we've had lots of great reaction to the last weeks of the Good Old Days of Radio Show. It seems like there's more and more listeners all the time, and it's growing and growing, and that's great. That means more people are either finding us or more people are getting into old-time radio shows. I'm not sure which it is, but either way, it's great. So today is going to be the first of several programs featuring a special guest from way down under in the wonderful country of Australia, which I visited a couple of years ago when my daughter got married down there. His name is Keith Scott. If you are a Facebook user and you frequent any of the sites related to old-time radio and old movies and things like that, you will see Mr. Scott commenting every now and then on different posts and different things and occasionally posting things. Keith Scott has been the leading impressionist and cartoon voice actor of Australia for a long time. We won't say how long. I'll let him say that if he wants to. He's done radio and TV, voices, everything for a long, long time. I guess in Australia there's a show called Hey, Hey, It's Saturday, and the midday show. So those of you listening in Australia will know him from that. You'll also know him as a local performer on cruise ships and I guess nightclubs too. You do nightclubs too, right, Keith?
Oh, yeah, still drag out my voices for all of those venues.
Okay. Years ago, they used to refer to actor Lon Chaney as the man of 1,000 faces. And I'm going to say that I have to refer to you as the man of 1,000 voices, because that's what you do. Most people who are my age or older will remember, and I say remember because I think he's still alive, Rich Little in the USA was and maybe is a great impressionist of different people, probably the most famous one that the USA has produced. And Keith Scott is the most famous one that the country of Australia has ever produced. So you're in good company with Mr. Little. If any of you have seen the 1999 Bullwinkle film, Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, you heard Keith as the voice of Bullwinkle and the narrator. He also appeared as the narrator of the Brendan Fraser film George of the Jungle. And if you go to Universal theme parks, you will hear Keith do Popeye at the Orlando, Florida Park ride. He also is an author of books. The Mouse That Roared, a detailed history of the J. Ward studio. J. Ward produced Fractured Flickers and Bullwinkle and George of the Jungle TV cartoons and all kinds of stuff for you baby boomers that you probably watched when you were a bit younger. And he has a new book out now, Cartoon Voices of the Golden Age. Is it 2 volumes or 1 volume?
2 volumes, John. It's the first is the history of each cartoon studio and how they used all of the great radio actors back in the Golden Age. Like from about 1937 onwards, they were using many, many radio people to do voices in cartoons, and none of them got screen credit. And that was the reason I researched and wrote this book over a 30-year period, because being in that field, I wanted to kind of really identify all these anonymous people who never really got credit as my idols and people who inspired me when I was a kid. Because I guess once I met Skip Craig in America, who was a leading collector of old-time radio shows.
Oh yes, I knew Skip.
Oh yeah, no, he was a veteran like Dave Golden, and he worked for the J. Ward studio. So I had my interest as a young kid was these TV cartoons, which really got to me around about the age of 6. I kind of knew I was somehow heading into this field. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but when I met Skip and started collecting old-time radio shows with all of these same people like Orson Welles in the Mercury Theatre and all of this, but eventually just got hooked on old-time radio, as all of your listeners are, and became an historian of it. And I think if you love something so deeply, you end up becoming very interested in its beginnings. And I always had a kind of a Sherlock Holmes bent to my nature. So that explains the books, and that's my convoluted answer to your opening.
Okay. Well, I remember going to Jay Ward Studios in the mid to late 70s and seeing Skip Craig sitting at his console physically editing different things. I think I remember Fractured Flickers he was working on and something else at the time.
Yes.
I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, he also he had something to do with the Spike Jones band at one point,
Oh
too.
yeah, he was he was the world's biggest Spike Jones buff as well when he was a kid, and he traveled with he ended up getting a job with the band, and it was like a dream come true for him. He became the band boy, and sat in on all of the recording sessions and radio shows and things that they did in the early '50s, and
Yeah.
toured with them on their live shows.
Yeah, see, I have a vague memory of that, but you have it down exactly. So you're better than me when it comes to some of these specific details, and that's great. Your
Well,
comment
yeah.
about uncredited radio actors appearing in cartoons, many of those same radio actors were uncredited even on radio. If you listen to a lot of these shows, you hear they give the main stars credit, and then once in a while, they'll mention others in the cast were, but a lot of times they don't even do that. And so you have to play a game of listen to the voice and see if you can figure out who it is in order to give proper credit when you're listening to these things.
I think, and also I think it was around about the early '50s that all the shows began crediting all of the supporting radio actors, but it depended on the producer. I think there was only a few in the '40s. Lux, of course, because it was a big production kind of theatrical, would if they didn't run out of time, of course, they did announce all the supporting players. But it got so bad that I ended up going up to Thousand Oaks Library when they had all of the scripts donated up there from CBS and Pacific Pioneer Broadcasters, and I did research on some of these cartoon people by finding the scripts, and the front cover page would have a cast list. That's how crazy obsessive I became about all of this.
Well, that's good. I'm glad somebody did that because I remember when all those bound volumes of scripts were in the basement at Sunset and Vine, and I would occasionally pick up a volume and look at them, but I never thought of actually going in there and writing everything down and keeping track of who was on what show.
I was the crazy one who did.
Oh, that's good. Hey, we need more crazy ones like that because it's just so sad how all this great radio was there and you could hear it, but 40, 50 years later, wherever we are now, 60 years later in some cases or more, there's no credits for a lot of this stuff. And it takes someone like you going in there and actually copying that information before all that stuff gets lost or destroyed somewhere.
Yeah,
because many.
Well, it's now been moved to the University of Santa Barbara.
Yes,
that
it
whole
has.
collection.
It's been moved. I don't know that they moved the scripts there, but I know they moved all of the radio transcriptions.
Right. Yeah. Now the scripts are there too because I've already begun doing research now. Now we can do it internationally via the internet. That's made it a lot easier than an expensive plane trip every few months.
Yeah, but that collection is one of the very, very few that exist. Most of the scripts, that was mostly CBS scripts at Pacific Pioneer Broadcasters, now at UC Santa Barbara. It was mostly CBS, but I don't know that there is a large collection of scripts from NBC, ABC, or Mutual anywhere. There might be some NBC stuff at the Library
they're all
of Congress.
in the library, Library of Congress. That's right. And there are a few outside collections sent to the one that I was talking about, such as Rudy Valley's gigantic collection of scripts. So all of those old shows from 1929 right until the end of his radio career, at least they're there for researchers,
I'd be curious if all of them are there because, tell you a quick little story, and I don't know. In 1975, 76, right in there when I was working for Groucho Marx, the idea was to put together a complete as we could, documentation of all his radio material. And
Hmm.
he made multiple appearances with Rudy Vallée in the early 40s. So I picked up the phone book and called Rudy Vallee's house, and he answered the phone. This was in the mid 70s. And I said, "Hi, I'm calling on behalf of the Groucho Marx archives. We're putting together some things, and I'd like to know if you still have any of the scripts or recordings for Groucho's appearances on your show." And he said, "Yeah, come on up." And he gave me his address, and I went up to his street, which was called Rue de Vallée Street. He had the street named after him in Southern California, and actually in the Hollywood Hills, Rue de Vallée Street. And I walked in, and he was very nice, and he pointed to a wall, and he said, "The recordings are over there, and the scripts are over there. If you know what dates you're looking for, they're sort of in order, but not exactly. So have a look." And I went through and I found most of what I was looking for. And he very generously said, "Just take them. I don't need them back. I don't
Wow.
need them. Just take them." And so I did. And I know that other people also went there, and large amounts of recordings and scripts walked away. So I would be curious to what actually wound up at the Library of Congress or wherever they are, because I've even seen on eBay, even in the last few year or two, I've still seen Rudy Vallée scripts popping up on eBay, and it's obviously the same batch that he had in his house that he had just given to somebody.
All
So
right.
yeah, there's a lot of that goes on. So finding
Oh, yeah.
complete runs of anything that have survived all these years of people borrowing them, taking them, being given them, whatever. It's amazing that this stuff still exists anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, so you got interested in vintage radio through vintage cartoons. Am I correct with that?
Really, yeah, that's right. Because I had written to a couple of the voice actors in 1970 and 71. That's people like Doss Butler, who was, of course, he was Yogi Bear, Mr. Ranger, sir. And all those famous Hanna-Barbera voices. And June Foray, of course, who became the most famous female animation voice. All of them started in their letters telling me about radio. And I was already a huge fan of old Hollywood films as a young kid, which, of course, in those days, they were on 7 days a week, morning, noon, and night, old-time black and white movies of the 30s and 40s. So when I
Even
heard
in Australia,
that
they
through,
were on like that.
oh yeah, no, Australia was always a gigantic consumer of
Okay.
all the American culture and movies and things, and we loved it. But when I got the letters from these famous voice artists and put two and two together, it was just at the time that people like Dave Golden and others were releasing LP records with old-time radio on them. So my very first purchase was, I think it was a fly-by-night company called Memorabilia LP or something like that. But they did 2 episodes of The Shadow with Orson Welles, and that got me hooked on old-time radio, just from having that cartoon background of loving the voices.
And you haven't stopped, of course.
Oh, no, I'm as crazed as all of us.
Good. All right, so you have selected a number of programs that are your favorites for various reasons, and over the next few weeks we are going to be listening to those along with more commentary from you. So why don't you start out and tell me, the first one up is an episode of the Stan Freberg Show from September 1st, 1957. I love Stan Freberg. Tell me why you picked this one.
Well, I also loved him. Again, as a kid, I was gifted with the Capitol Records 2 LP set, which was called The Best of the Stan Freberg Shows. And this is years before I heard the actual full shows, the 15 that he did in the summer of 57, right as radio was on its last legs, as we know it. And the connection, and especially because we're theming these 10 broadcasts to your audience around radio people who also did animation voices. Well, Stan Freberg, of course, is well known as your guest, Dr. Demento, related. When he was in his late teens, he just did an audition for Warner Brothers. In fact, I think it was then Leon Schlesinger Productions before Warner Brothers bought it. They released all the cartoons through Warner Brothers, and he ended up doing a few voices, supporting characters to start with in cartoons. And also, I felt that as an opening episode on this theme, the Stan Freberg Show also features these two classic people who are now known by many of the listeners as cartoon immortals, and that's Dos Butler, who was the king of Hanna-Barbera's early television cartoons, Huckleberry Hound, Snagglepuss, all these great voices, and the great June Foray, who really was best known for Rocky the Flying Squirrel and Natasha Fatale, the Master Spy, and Freberg himself. And this is a particularly interesting episode simply because the final skit, they redo Freberg's most popular record with a live audience, and he gets an enormously good reaction because he has a great studio audience in this episode. It's the St. George and the Dragonette, which is the incredibly funny little tight parody of Dragnet, one of radio's immortal shows. So there's a lot of radio and animation connections in this particular episode, and I just thought it would be a good one to launch this theme.
Well, that's great. You mentioned Stan Freberg doing various cartoon voices. My brother-in-law in Los Angeles area, he still lives there, I don't. When I was dating my wife, he would make these weird sounds as Pete Puma. And I had no idea who Pete Puma was. And eventually I figured out that Pete Puma was Stan Freberg, who I already liked. I guess he appears in several cartoons doing this Pete Puma voice. And that was
it was only one cartoon, but it was such a crazy character. People remembered it all these years later. And really what it was Stan Freberg imitating Frank Fontaine when he used to be a regular for 1 year on the Jack Benny Show in 1950, before years later when Frank Fontaine became Crazy Guggenheim, but he was, on Benny's show, he was doing that sweepstakes winner. And so he just exaggerated that already exaggerated voice slightly, and it became Pete Puma.
Oh, okay. So I didn't know that. I know who Frank Fontaine was, and I'm familiar with his voice. And now that you put it together for me, yes, that does sound like Frank Fontaine. Okay, boy, I learn something new every day.
A lot of like that.
Yeah, that was it. yeah, that was it. And my brother-in-law used to do that all the time. I thought, what is he doing? He said, well, that's Pete Puma. And now you're telling me there was only one cartoon. I thought there would have been a dozen of them. It was so well known.
It was a Bugs Bunny cartoon that this character Pete Puma appeared in, but it was such a strong voice. People just remembered it, and it seems like there were many of them, but not just the one.
Oh, okay. Well, amazing new information for me again. All right, well, we're going to listen to the Stan Freberg Show from September 1st, 1957. Then we'll have some comments on that, and we'll close out for this particular episode and come back again next week with another one. So here is the Stan Freberg Show.
This is the 8th show of the series, of a brand new radio series.
From Hollywood, we present the Stan Freberg Show.
With the music of Billy May.
Plus the songs of Peggy Taylor with Dos Butler, June Foray, Peter Leeds, and the Judd Conlon Rhythmaires.
You may not find us on your TV, because in case you did not know, we're being brought to you on RADI. Thank you very much. And to start us off tonight, we've invited back for the second time on our show the Zazzaloff family. As we told you, they're Swiss. This way, we didn't offend anyone. This is probably one of the finest acrobatic acts in the business, and rather a novelty on radio. Ladies and gentlemen, the Zazzaloff family! Here they go, ladies and gentlemen. This is magnificent to see. I wish you could see it. And they're bouncing up in the air. Look at that. Why, he's holding them up in the air by one. Hey! Very good. And now wearing purple tights. And look at that. My goodness, that's amazing. 18 men, ladies and gentlemen, on one end of a... Wonderful, wonderful. And now on with the show.
Hey, Stan,
Well, what is it, Dawes Butler, as they say in radio?
what are we going to do next?
Well, I'll tell you, Dawes, I was wondering the other day,
Wondering what?
how the good humor men stand it. Can you imagine driving an ice cream truck around all day long, let alone all summer long, with the same song flailing you about the ears?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How often do they change that song, I wonder?
I don't know.
See, those chimes that drive me nuts.
Yeah, what song do you hear most often?
London Bridge is falling down. How about you?
I hear London Bridge quite a bit. Pop Goes the Weasel is very big on our street. Let's write a screenplay about it, okay?
Okay, and let's have the titles appear on ice cream bars.
That's good, that's good.
20th Century Freberg presents Uninterrupted Melody. This is the story of men in uniform, their loves, their hopes, their dreams, and of the task to which they have so devoted their lives. Yes, to that gallant corps of heroes, the good humor men of America, is this picture respectfully dedicated. Do you know what it's like, after having a day off with the family, to try to sleep on the night before you report back for action? Do you know what it's like to lie there and live with fear? Charlie Krasmeyer knows.
Charlie, what are you doing?
I'm lying here living with fear.
Well, try and get some sleep, sweetheart.
Yeah, I'm just lying here thinking about tomorrow.
Well, you just mustn't lie there thinking about tomorrow.
Tomorrow, it's Pop Goes the Weasel and hundreds of grimy little hands reaching out for ice cream bars. Walter Yoder cracked up last week. I saw him when he took him away, Sue. It wasn't pretty.
Oh, hush, hush.
Are you sorry you married a good humor man?
Oh, no. No, 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 no. Oh, no, no.
Are you sure? No? Are you sure it wasn't just the glamour of the uniform and all?
Charlie, I'd love you whether you had that white coat or not.
Yes, men like Charlie Krasmeyer know their job is no easy one, but they live with it, and they report for duty every day at the plant, where their boss, the Chief Commander F.C. Barr, is just now entering the building. He opens the door and confronts a small, bald man with horn-rimmed spectacles who looks up from the piano.
Green?
Morning, Commander.
Yes, what's going on around here? That's all I want to know, Green. I heard one of our trucks over in Westwood playing hound dog.
But,
Listen, I had that truck taken out of service immediately. Nursery songs, that's all I want to hear. They don't cost us anything.
But, FC, the men get punchy from nursery songs. They're cracking up out there.
Cracking up, you say nonsense. Every American loves nursery songs. Besides, they're free.
Yeah, but...
Maybe you'd like to go back to television and write Briar Patch Leg jingles.
Okay, FC. That's my sore spot. Say, here's a little thing I've been working on this morning. Now, how does this strike you? The three little kittens, they lost their mittens and they began to cry. Meow! Meow!
Wait a minute.
Meow!
Hold it.
Me.
Hold it. Sure you aren't using a Castellanets arrangement?
Positive.
It's good. Ah, yes. One of our more enthusiastic salesmen, I see.
A cute board for 3 days now. He came in last week.
Get him out of here. Take him out. He's too enthusiastic. Get him out. From the acute ward, you say?
Yeah, poor devil. I know him. His name is Heiniger.
He had the nerve to ask me to take him off London Bridge and put him on Yankee Doodle 2 weeks ago. But he had a month to go yet. That's the trouble with labor today. Wishy-washy.
That's right, FC.
You bet that's right. Now get back to work. I got an employee pep meeting in 5 minutes.
This is the briefing room where every morning 200 white-coated, good-humor men sit glumly staring into space, horribly calm, not daring to think about the day ahead of them, only anxious to get the job done.
All righty, men. Yes. Thank you for that splendid ovation. Let's stand up and sing our little song now, and let's sing it like we were in a good humor, eh? Yes. Humor, yes, we are good humor. That is not no rumor. Yay, bo, music, how we love the music. That's fine. Lovely nursery music, tinkling as we go. Earplugs, we won't wear at all, or we will be sentenced to 100 days of Yankee Doodle, push the tutti frutti, sell it by the oodle. Good humor, we love you, yay. Well, that was fine, just fine, man. You can tell a real GH man every time, I always say. You know, you don't eat our bars with your fingers. There's a stick to it. Well, man, that's the key to successful selling. Stick to it, right? Yay. Yes, ice cream salesmen are the backbone of this nation, if you ask me. You men keep up the good work, and one day soon, I'll have your chimes tuned. You see if I won't. No, I won't hold you because I know you're anxious to get out in the field. Pardon me, Mr. Barr, sir. Well, Charlie Kransmeyer, what is it? I've been on Pop Goes the Weasel for 3 weeks now. Could I please trade with Jones here? He's got 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie. You know the rules, Kransmeyer. The cycle's 8 weeks. I can't stand Pop Goes the Weasel. I come home at night, I can't sleep. All night long I hear a penny for a spool of thread, a penny for a needle. I'm sick of it. Sick.
Oh, now, let me have his song, sir. I like Pop Goes the Weasel, honest.
Nonsense. Pop Goes the Weasel is Kransmeyer's assignment. Just for that outburst, Charlie, you can't have 4 and 20 blackbirds at all. When your time is up, you'll get the farmer in the dell. Not the farmer in the dell! I had that last cycle! Get back in your seat, sir.
Do we get earmuffs or don't we?
Well, we can talk about it.
You may talk about it.
Put me down! This is mutiny!
Oats, peas, beans, and barley grow. Oats, peas, beans, all nursery songs, nuts. I am the laughing stock of Robbins, Feist, and Miller. I gotta get away from this. I'll just take a shortcut through the parking lot here. Hey, that's funny. Somebody left their motor running. What's this? Somebody bound and gagged in the front seat. Heavens to popsicles! FC, it's you! And somebody's tied greasy ropes around your nice brown suit. FC, that ain't no brown suit. You've been dipped. Let me get that gag out of your mouth there. Oh, gee, boss, you got little bumps all over. You must be all pecan crunch underneath the chocolate.
Yes, for you, Charlie Kransmeyer, and thousands of ice cream men like you, courage is not a sometime thing. and a tin ear helps.
Salute you men in white coats. You're a brave and gallant bunch. You stand for right and liberty, to say nothing of pecan crunch.
Thank you. Well, we hope you enjoyed our stirring documentary tonight, Uninterrupted Melody. Now, some folks might think this would be a good spot in the show for Peggy Taylor to sing. It is. She's going to sing not 79, not 81, but around the world in 80 days. Count them.
Around the world I've searched for you. I traveled on when hope was gone to keep a rendezvous. I knew somewhere, sometime, somehow, you'd look at me and I would see the smile you're smiling now. It might have been in County Down, or in New York, or gay Paris, or even London town. No more will I go all around the world, for I have found my world in you. Autour du monde, je cherchais toi, et sans espoir de rendez-vous, tout de même je continue. Je sais quelque part, quelque temps, quelquefois, vous me regardez et je vois votre assuré du moment. Cela aurait pu être County Down, ou à New York, ou Gay Paris, ou même à London Town. Plus jamais irai j'aurai tout du monde, car j'ai trouvé mon monde en toi.
Once again, it's time to meet our panel of experts who are back with us tonight as we ran over 2 weeks ago and we did not finish our discussion. I'm glad that you could be back with us, Dr. Linus Coit.
Thank you. It's nice being back.
Mr. G.L. Spoon.
Good evening, friends in Radioland.
And finally, Mrs. Edna St. Louis, Missouri.
The pleasure's all mine. Although it does seem to me I got second billing last time.
Yes.
After all, I do have a master's degree in Tarzan.
Yes, indeed, Miss Missouri. Well, be that it may, we're not going to bring up tonight any of the other things we discussed 2 weeks ago. For example, whether or not Often Annie has one red dress and one pair of long white cotton stockings that she washes daily and wears over and over, or many red dresses and many white cotton stockings.
I know that one.
Oh, Doctor, I know you do. I know you do. But
I do know that answer.
Yes, I know you do. But we won't go into that, shall
I didn't get a doctor's degree in Little Orphan Annie for nothing.
Yes, well,
Boy, you know, this guy's really got to rub in that doctor's degree.
Yeah, well, shall we move ahead to other questions tonight? But we promised that. Yeah, I know we did. Now, shall we... Well, you promised, you gave me your word out in the hall before we went on the air that we wouldn't have any kind of discussion.
Yes,
right?
that's absolutely
Oh,
true.
thank you.
Let's pass the peace pipe here, for goodness sake. Yeah. Now, I've received my master's degree in
Oh,
Tarzan,
boy.
and you insulted the ideal of my life when you said Tarzan was 72 years old and wore a hairpiece.
Well, he does. I'll apologize if Mr. Spoon will.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, well, okay, look, I'm sorry. I'll take back what I said about Tarzan's hairpiece. If you will apologize publicly for calling Dick Tracy a big jerk.
Well, of course.
Listen, Tracy happens to be, and the biographers will agree, one of the greatest living American heroes. And he's just recovering from a severe head wound as well.
Well, I'm terribly sorry. I apologize.
Oh, yes, indeed. Aren't we getting along famously here tonight?
Well, it's very nice of you. It's very nice. And believe me, Miss Missouri, I didn't mean to insult Tarzan. Between you and I...
Between you and me, Mr.
Ooh, that education.
It's rather nice of her to do that to you.
Between you and I, he's a great ape man, and truthfully, if you didn't get right up there on the newspaper with a magnifying glass, you couldn't tell he wears a wig.
Wears a wig?
Yeah, he does wear a wig.
You should have as much hair on your bearskin rug.
Well, I don't think it's
Now, please, people, shall we simmer down and shall we? Out in the hall, no more discussion.
Put us on slow boil.
Yes, sorry. Now we'll go to our first question tonight. It's in Dick Tracy now. This is the question. Does or does not Junior wear a fright wig?
Well, the answer to that has to be negative.
Negative.
It's the boy's own hair, and it certainly doesn't take Dick Tracy to figure out where that question came from, Miss Missouri.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Spoon. I had nothing to do with that question.
Oh, no, those questions.
People,
Well,
look,
I
no,
called
just a
him
moment.
Mr.
Here, I have a
Yes,
I have something to
yes.
say. Listen, people. Be that as it may, it is a fright wig on the boy.
It is not a fright wig on
It's
the boy.
a fright
Listen,
wig.
It is not. It's the same hair that any 12-year-old boy will
12-year-old
wear.
boy?
12-year-old.
Certainly.
Why, he's older than Little Orphan Annie.
I take that as a personal affront, madam.
My stockings
Hold
off.
it. We've been all through this. If anybody should be drawing Social Security, it's you and Tarzan. This woman should look that good in white cotton stockings.
Please, watch.
Look, Junior, the subject is Junior, right?
That's right.
He's a normal American boy that any mother would be proud to call her son. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's an artistic boy as well. How many boys do you know who could sketch pictures for the crime lab like he does?
Don't make me sick to my stomach. You don't believe that kid really draws those pictures, do you?
Of course he draws those pictures.
Oh,
What do you
boy.
mean?
Oh, boy. Listen, he's got a ghost artist, and if he does draw them, I could take that cigar of yours and draw a better picture with the ash. I could. Believe me, I
Don't
could.
give me that.
Gentlemen, we are having just a little bit of fun at the round table tonight, aren't we?
Oh, it's lots of fun.
I'd like to say it's Sandy.
Sandy,
If I
that
just-
idiot animal.
Please.
How would you like me to punch you in that big, fat, uneducated nose?
Now, John,
You let
please,
him
now,
have
let's
it,
go.
John.
Fine,
That's
please,
right.
now, let's move on to the
boy.
next subject now, shall we?
All right, let's
Now,
go.
here, could or could not Buck Rogers beat Flash Gordon in a ray gun fight?
Tarzan could make monkeys out of both of them.
Take him against Punjab and Mr. Am with his disintegrator cane and it'd be a one-sided affair, I'll tell you that.
Listen, I happen to live by the Dick Tracy Code, and we're here to stop ray gun fights, not to encourage them. If you're talking about a showdown in self-defense, Tracy can wipe up Rogers, Gordon, Punjab, Sandy, and the antique ape man, and he can do it with Kardui under one arm and a bandaged head.
Why, you viper! You are a viper!
Man.
Listen, I'll thank you to please leave.
Just down, Sandy, down. Well, once again, that concludes another chapter of Face the Fun. Sandy, down, Sandy. First of all, it's good night to Mr. G.L. Spoon.
If someone shoots you in the chest, extract the bullet and look for small telltale bore markings on the slug, and then call a doctor. That's Crime Stopper.
Yes, indeed. And it's good night to Dr. Linus Boyd.
Leaping lizards. Some folks don't realize just how lucky they are until some other folks shows them how much they've got. Little Orphan Annie, King Feature Syndicate, 1947.
And finally, our Tarzan expert, Miss Edna St. Louis, Missouri. Here, Miss Missouri. Miss Missouri. Now come down off the curtain there now. Here, now help her off the curtain. Now, Miss Missouri, that isn't it.
Well, so much for literature. We have received so many card and letter asking us to do St. George and the Dragonet, to say nothing of countless phone call, that we have decided to dig it out of the trunk tonight and dust it off. I'm very fortunate to have the two people who made the original record with me, June Foray and Dawes Butler, who also wrote it with me. Peter, if you please.
The legend you are about to hear is true. Only the needle should be changed to protect the record.
This is the countryside. My name is St. George. I'm a knight. Saturday, July 10th, 8:05 p.m. I was working out of the castle on the night watch when a call came in from the chief. A dragon had been devouring maidens. Homicide. My job, slay him. Call me, Chief?
Yeah, it's a dragon again, devouring maidens. The king's daughter may be next.
Mm-hmm. Got a lead?
No, nothing much to go on. Say, did you take that 45 automatic into the lab to have him check on it?
Yeah, you were right.
I was right?
Yeah, it was a gun. 8:22 p.m. I talked to one of the maidens who had almost been devoured.
Who are you?
I'm St. George, ma'am. Homicide, ma'am. I want to ask you a few questions, ma'am. I understand you were almost devoured by the ma'am. Is that right, Dragon?
It was terrible. He breathed fire on me. He burned me already.
How can I be sure of that, ma'am?
Believe me, I got it straight from the dragon's mouth.
11:45 p.m. I rode over the King's Highway. I saw a man, stopped to talk to him. Pardon me, sir, could I talk for just a minute, sir?
Sure, I don't mind.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a knave.
Didn't I pick you up in a 903 last year for stealing tarts?
Yeah? So what, do you want to make a federal case out of it?
No, sir, we just heard there was a dragon operating in this neighborhood. We just want to know if you've seen him.
Sure, I seen him.
Mm-hmm. Could you describe him for me?
What's to describe? You see one dragon, you seen them all.
Could you try and remember, sir, just for the record? We just want to get the facts.
Well, he was, he had orange polka dots.
Yes, sir?
Purple feet, breathing fire and smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And one big bloodshot eye right in the middle of his forehead, and like that.
Notice anything unusual about him?
No, he was just a run-of-the-mill dragon,
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. All right, you can go now.
Hey, by the way, how are you going to catch him?
I thought you'd never ask. A dragon net. 3:05 p.m. I was riding back into the courtyard to make my report to the lab. Then it happened. It was a dragon.
Hey, I'm the fire-breathing dragon. You must be St. George, right?
Yes, sir?
I see you got one of them new 45 caliber swords.
That's about the size of it.
You slay me.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about.
What do you mean?
I'm taking you in a 502. You figure it out.
What's the charge?
Devouring maidens out of season.
Out of season? You never pin that rap on me? Do you hear me, cop?
Yeah, I hear you. I got you in a 412, too.
A 412? What's a 412?
Overacting. Let's go.
On September the 5th, the dragon was tried and convicted. His fire was put out and his maiden-devouring license revoked. Maiden devouring out of season is punishable by a term of not less than 50 or more than 300 years.
Thank you very much. We're little folks, so good night late. We're little good night, so folks late. We're a little, well, never mind. Until the next week, this is Stan Freberg saying thanks for listening. God bless you and good night.
The Stan Freberg Show is produced in Hollywood by Pete Barnum and is written by Stan Freberg, Pete Barnum, and Dawes Butler. Featuring the music of Billy May, Judd Conlon for the Mayors, and the songs of Peggy Taylor, with Dawes Butler, Peter Lees, and June Foray. Bud Sewell speaking.
Well, there we go. Right from Stan Freberg's personal master recordings, The Stan Freberg Show from September 1st, 1957. We're here with our special guest for this show and for the next weeks of shows, Keith Scott. Well, any comments on this one? Further?
Well, that was, you're still getting me there, I guess, for all the way down to Australia. I think in that show you can hear just the marriage of how the top radio actors worked so well in animation for our theme of shows here, especially in St. George and the Dragon Net, because he'd worked with Dawes Butler ever since Time for Beanie, the puppet show in 1949. So they knew each other's timing inside out. And, in the J. Ward Fractured Fairy Tales, many of the voices that Dawes Butler and June Foray did on the Stan Freberg Show ended up in the Fractured Fairy Tales cartoons. You know, the little Jerry Lewis knave and the Brooklyn Princess and of course the fire-breathing dragon. And it really was an industry where they borrowed talent from each other, both radio and cartoons, from around about 37 to 57. That 20-year window really was just an exchange of talent. Of course, the radio people did many more radio shows. Cartoons were just an occasional gig for most of them, except for the top 10 people like Mel Blanc and Dawes Butler, who were called for animation gigs time and time again. But in volume-wise, radio shows still made up the biggest percentage of their income.
Yeah, in order to keep working, you did radio. You couldn't just wait to do a cartoon every few months.
Exactly.
A couple things from that show. Right near the beginning, he did this little thing with people from Sweden or something, and he said he did that way he wouldn't.
Oh, Swiss.
Swiss. That way he wouldn't offend anyone. He was way ahead of his time on that with all the PC and woke crowd. Now.
I think you've already had the famous episode of Elderly Man River.
Yes, we did.
And that was where I found Freberg from 1957 to be so, what's the word, prescient, that he predicted the offense industry of today and political correctness and all of that years and years before. And that's amazing to me that stuff like this holds up so well. And we're talking half a century ago.
Right. It's also great that we can actually hear it, that it isn't lost like many radio shows.
Yes, yes. Well, these are particularly valuable because Freberg was, as I think you pointed out in one of the Dr. Demento shows, that he was such a great satirist by the time he was in his late 20s. Freberg, his mind was very attuned to parody. Like I think Jack Webb, who was kind of a dour personality, was just delighted when they presented the St. George and the Dragonet record to him, and he gave his total approval.
Sure, yeah. All right, so on a personal level, did you ever get to meet Stan Freberg, Dawes Butler, or June Foray? Well, then
all of them.
Then you've got to tell us some stories. Tell us some stories. What was Stan Freberg like? I've talked about him a little bit because I've met him on many occasions, but what's your take?
Well, I think you were there at that Spurdvac meeting in '93 that he turned up and did a long talk about his career, and I was there with Ken that morning. But no, I knew him. I guess he really sort of got to know me after my book, The Moose That Roared, was published, because I mentioned him in it and Time for Beanie, and he told me some really funny little things because. I think he was kind of aware of the fact that people knew he had a pretty gigantic ego, but he liked talking about Paul Frees, who had the biggest ego of all of them. A lot of this ego is just insecurity, but it came across as a little arrogant to some people in the industry. And it was so funny that Freberg was saying about, he did that LP, Stan Freberg Presents the United States of America, which I'm sure you've heard.
Oh, yeah. And Volume 2 as well.
Yes. And of course, Paul Frees was the narrator all the way through that, doing a real sort of exaggerated Orson Welles, like Stan Freberg modestly presents the United States of America. Right. And when he told me that when they did that recording, Paul Frees ad-libbed modestly. He wasn't in the script. And Freberg pulled him out. I was like, "Come on, Paul! What are you trying to, add things? I didn't write modestly." And he said that Frees said back to him, "Stan, it's going to stay." So he had the battle of these two enormous egos in the studio. That's
interesting. I didn't know that was an ad-lib line. It fits perfectly.
It does. It fits. But then again, Paul Frees had such a great comic sense too, and. But no, he was great, and of course, I knew Dawes Butler from that first letter I wrote in 1970, and it was like when I was a kid, I was only like 16, 17, and I'd been listening to that album of the Stan Freberg shows for years, and there was little photographs of Dawes Butler and June Foray in there, and it made them look human. Otherwise, I just knew them as names on the screen, like cartoon voice credits. So I finally decided to write to them. I remember my mother saying, these people are so busy, they'll never take the time to write back. They won't have the time, And I was delighted that Dawes Butler contacted me with a long, very helpful letter, sent photographs. And June Foray, then a few months later, she was incredibly helpful. So I got to know all of these people. And lo and behold, I ended up working with June Foray, a childhood idol. And it was, again, one of those dream come true moments, So... yeah, I knew all of these people. I even met Peter Leeds, who was the voice in that Freberg show. He was the announcer at the beginning of St. George and the Dragonet. He even did a few cartoons, like a couple of Mr. Magoo shorts at UPA. So really, the radio industry made total use of these great voices for animation. I think the one that he said, there was a character in that skit that they did in that show we just heard, which was the uninterrupted melody, the Good Humor Men.
Yes.
And it was the guy who was writing the jingles, and it was this voice he often did on Fractured Fairy Tales for absent-minded kings. And when I asked him about this, I mentioned that the first time I heard it was on the Freberg radio show, where he's going, oats, peas, beans, and barley, oh, nuts, And that ended up being his famous Captain Crunch voice.
I was going to say, that sounds like Captain Crunch to me.
Yeah. And, well, he just exaggerated that voice even broader for the cartoon character. It was like, oh, hello there, sea dogs. Captain Crunch here, But he told me that voice was an impression that he used to do as a teenager himself of this 1930s character actor in movies called Charlie Butterworth.
Oh, okay. I know Charles Butterworth,
yeah,
sure.
he was... Yeah, he was a regular on the Fred Astaire Packard show in 37, 38. And he had that very absent-minded quality about him, too, where he'd say things like, I woke up this morning, I took my usual plunge down the stairs. Great fey humor. Doris Butler did confirm that many of the voices he and Paul Frees did in animation that became famous cartoon characters. This I learned when I was quite young, but now it makes perfect sense. All of them were imitations of old deceased character actors, because in those days, as you know, the voices were much larger than life and theatrical compared to today's more underplayed method of acting, which can either be realistic or sometimes, to be brutally honest, it can be a little dull, and yeah, being an old schooler like yourself, I just love all of those great broad character voices because they're just so memorable,
Well, they had voices then, and they had faces then. As
that's
say.
Great. That's a great paraphrase of the Gloria Swanson line from Sunset Boulevard.
See, you know where I'm stealing my material from, too. All right. Well, great. I'm glad that you can give us some insights there on Stan Freberg, Dawes Butler, and June Foray. We're speaking with Keith Scott, the famous and infamous and very famous Australian humorist and impressionist, and the author of the book. Tell the audience the name of the book again.
The new book is called Cartoon Voices of the Golden Age, 1930 to 1970. And for anyone interested in either cartoon voice actors or radio actors, there's many, many references to old-time radio throughout each studio narrative, showing how they, relied on each other. Each industry relied on the other for voice talent.
Okay, so, and where does one buy said book?
These days it's fairly easy. It's either through the publisher bearmannermedia.com or through Amazon. And it's in 2 volumes. The second volume is a filmography of each studio, Warner Brothers, MGM, Columbia, UPA, Disney, Walter Lantz, and all of their cartoons with voice credits for the first time in decades. And the roles that each actor played. So it's a very ambitious reference guide, and it will no doubt create a volume 2 in years to come because new information is always popping up in unexpected places. Same as with radio history.
Sure. Well, let's give Ben Omart and Bear Manor Publishing the official plug because I'd much rather support them than the giant Amazon. But if people have their Amazon account and they're used to their Amazon whatevers, then go ahead and buy it on Amazon. But we prefer, or I'll say you can speak for yourself. I prefer you buy it direct from Ben Omart and Bear Manor Publishing because they publish all kinds of great books related to vintage radio and vintage film.
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, his second book, way back in the year 2001, was a biography of Paul Frees that he asked me to write, but I didn't have time. And he wrote a great book on Paul Frees, and I gave him a lot of reference material. June Foray did the foreword to that book, and I provided an afterword about Paul Frees' radio career. So he's been deliberately publishing anything that's to do with the obscure areas of showbiz, and he's to be applauded for that because he's now up to like over 700 titles, which is an amazing achievement.
Yeah, it's a stunning catalog of movie radio history. Yeah, it sure is. And just about any semi-obscure subject or person you can think of has a book done on them and is available from Bear Manor Press, and they should be sponsoring this podcast after all of this, but whatever. Anyway, Ben's a good guy, so I don't mind giving him free plugs.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, this is John Tefteller and the Good Old Days of Radio Show. Special guest today, Keith Scott. Keith, you'll be back with us next week. What show do we have to tease for next week? What are we hearing next week?
I think we should go on show number 2 with the greatest acknowledged voice artist of them all, the great Mel Blanc, and his own radio show.
Okay, now for years I had no idea Mel Blanc had a radio show of his own, but recently I bought a large amount of radio transcription. There was a whole run of Mel Blanc shows in there, so I do know that now he did a radio show, and we're going to hear them. I haven't heard any of these, so next week will be a treat for me because it will be something I've never heard before, and we can talk about that next week. In the meantime, Keith, thank you for appearing on the Good Old Days of Radio show today. We'll be back.
It's my pleasure, you guys, and it's a great podcast I've been enjoying for the last year and a half, and I'm very happy to be a guest.
Good. Well, you'll be back with us again next week. And thanks so much to everybody listening. Check out the Facebook page, Good Old Days of Radio Show. Check out the website, goodolddaysofradio.com. Keep telling your friends. Spread the word far and wide. This special series with Keith Scott, make sure all the film and cartoon fans that you know are tuned into this, because there'll be all kinds of fun information and fun shows to listen to. So until next week, this is John Tefteller saying goodbye.